to Africa, say, where needs take shape, thought finds out, and every conversation explores the art of thinking beyond the obvious. And today I have my special guest. One of his advocacy to bridge the gap between physical combat and professional dominance. As a founder of scientific wrestling, no other than Mr. Jake Shannon.
Hey Daniel,
Welcome,
how are you?
welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Fabulous, fabulous, Mr. Jake. And welcome, and Africa. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I missed?
Yeah, I really appreciate you. Love your show, and thanks again. Really appreciate you having me on and sharing with your audience. I am a coach, and I have two coaching businesses. One is in the realm of grappling, martial arts, wrestling, and the other one is in the domain of business, particular small business, and I focus primarily on revenue operations, and different ways to increase the top line on an income statement or a profit and loss statement.
And Coach Jake, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom today. Thank you. And today let's talk about business is combat, applying scientific wrestling principles to market dominance business combat. And applying scientific, of course, the scientific process. So tell us, beyond the metaphor, what is the fundamental connection between scientific wrestler and the elite business strategies?
I don't think people that are unfamiliar with each discipline would be able to see the connections, and I completely understand that, but they're so intimately related. This arena of sports, and particularly combat sports, and the arena of entrepreneurship. And I think really what is the fundamental connection between, say, something like wrestling or grappling and entrepreneurship
Hmm.
is that you have to bet on yourself. You're putting yourself out there in front of the world, whether it's the marketplace or the arena, the wrestling mat, or a MMA cage, and it's you. And if you win, it's you, and if you lose, it's you. And
Hmm.
so it's very challenging. I'm not sure most people that have never been an entrepreneur or ever done wrestling or grappling understand it's a lot harder than people actually think it is, and they may think it's already hard, but once you get in there and get doing it, to actually win, especially at the higher levels, is unbelievably difficult. And so, to me, that is the real value of a coach, right? Is somebody who is not only an expert in facilitating the material, whether it be sports or business, but also an expert at holding you accountable and pushing you uh, beyond what you think you can do, and holding you accountable to the success and the execution of your full potential.
The full potential indeed. So, Coach Jake, wrestlers speak of position before submission. How does this principle translate to building a foundational market position before going for a decisive, dominant move against a competitor?
Well, so a lot of this, when you're really good, it looks effortless. But what people don't see is the hours of practice behind the scenes that it takes to win, whether it be in business or it's in any sport. And one of those things that you need to do is you need to do market research in the case of business, or competitor research in the case of business and sports. So, that could look like watching the tape of an athlete. That could look like going and reverse engineering the sales funnel that a business has. You could call and secret shop the business, put yourself in their funnel and figure it out. There's all kinds of ways to do this market analysis. It's really, especially on the business side, unbelievable now what AI allows you to do. You really have like graduate level researcher at your hands with a lot of these AIs, whether it's Perplexity or Claude or ChatGPT or Gemini.
Hmm. And Coach Jake, in wrestling, hesitation is fatal. How can a business leader cultivate a culture of explosive action and decisiveness without devolving into a reckless, poorly planned moves?
Yeah, it's interesting because while we know the history, we know the past, but we can't change it. We don't know the future, but we can change it. And there's a couple tools, so I do have a strong background in coaching. I was very, very lucky to apprentice with some of the greatest coaches and athletes in the sport that I'm involved with. In addition to that, I have a strong mathematical and quantitative background thanks to my master's degree in financial engineering. And for me, a lot of it goes back to metrics and data. I believe that you need to really, really watch your numbers. So, in the case of business, we need to see, okay, let's talk about sales. What is the speed to lead? How quickly do I call back a customer when they call when I get a lead? Right? What we find in the statistics is the shorter the time between the lead being submitted and coming through your system and the time that you call them, that's shorter the time. I think some of the stats say up to 400% times it increases your likelihood to close the deal up to 400% if you just can close that gap to like under a minute. So, I do believe looking at your numbers and keeping tight records of what works and what doesn't work
Hmm.
allows you to take the best from the past and start extrapolating into the future. So you're not making completely reckless decisions, but you still have to take risks. I mean, risk is central to the definition of the word entrepreneur. And that is the same, there are clearly risks in sport, right? Like that's the whole point. But I do believe that metrics is the key to both.
Mm. Interesting indeed. So, wrestlers must have immense situational awareness, feeling an opponent weight and momentum shift. What is the business equivalent of this feel, and how can CEO develop it?
Yeah, well, the wrestler develops that through wrestling, right? So we could talk about technique, we could talk about history, we could talk about strategy, we could talk about statistics, we could talk about the uh, opponents and competitive analysis, but nothing is going to replace the feel of actually getting on the mat and feeling the energy, the push and pull, the speed, the timing, the balance, the strength. And this is the same thing with business. So you really have to immerse yourself completely in every aspect of the business. And this is one of the hardest things that I find a lot of my mentees when I'm coaching them. They have difficulty keeping all the different plates spinning at the same time. But again, I think the key to that is numbers. Again, is statistics. Is if I can create a dashboard, I could get a real sense of the pulse of my business. So just like when I'm driving a car, I can drive and I can weave in and out of traffic and I can do all these great maneuvers, but it's the dashboard that helps me. It tells me how much fuel I have left, tells me the speed I'm going. Maybe if you have a newer car, it gives me the GPS. It tells me what is the point B and what are the traffic stops. So again, a lot of this don't want to sound like a broken record, but to me personally, I believe the key to performance is knowing your target, knowing the numbers, the metrics, and the KPIs. And the only way you're going to get good data is through frequency. You have to get into the mix of things and start recording and making sure that you're getting all the relevant data that you possibly can so you can make the best decision, so you can execute like a chief executive officer.
Coach Jake, both wrestling and business are inherently about imposing your will. How do you channel the aggressive competitive spirit in a way that's strategic and ethical, not just a brutal?
Well, yeah, that's a deep question. Actually, there's multiple parts to it. First is the question of will, and then second is the question of ethics. I think that with regards to willpower, um, you have to, for lack of a better term, this is you have to market your goals and your dreams to yourself. And what I mean by that is we live in a world, we are all in the information age. So your average person today sees more data in a day than somebody from like the 14th century saw in their entire life. And so there's enormous amounts of distraction and whatnot. So the key to a lot of this is setting a very big, difficult goal, something that excites you, something that you would be willing to walk through a plate of glass for, something difficult and something amazing, something, maybe it's your legacy, maybe it's your family, maybe it's money. You got to figure out and know that about yourself so you can push through when things are hard, which is going to be most of the time. So I think big goals is a big, big part of creating the will. And then you have to, this is what I mean is once you have the goal, you have to market to yourself. And what I mean is that you need to write your goals daily. And it's so funny because most people write their goals one time a year at the
Hmm.
beginning of the year. And then they wonder when they go and look back on those goals why they didn't achieve them at the end of the year. And it's because if you're hearing, here in the United States, for example, if you're hearing Joe Biden's name or Donald Trump's name now, it used to be Joe Biden, but if you're hearing Trump's name all the time, more than you're hearing your own goals, whose goal do you think you'll implement? Your own or Trump or Biden or whoever? So you really need to put a priority in a forefront and remind yourself of your goals. So this will thing is two parts. One, setting something that you're very, very passionate about, that's very important to you at a deep level. And then the second part of that is putting it in front of you all the time so that you have consistency, because it is really literally getting 1% better every day. Consistency is huge. Now, to the ethical standpoint that you're talking about, it's interesting to me because there have been so many changes in business, that kind of are reflections of the culture at large. Like you see these pushes from groups like the World Economic Forum for DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, all that. Okay, great. Um, I think that the very best ethical system for business, though, because those things come and go with as fads, but I think, and this goes back to my integration of sports with business. I've, in fact, written a couple books on this subject. Here's one of them. I don't know if you can see it, Sportify. And
Mhm.
this one is Sportify Beyond Business Ethics. And the whole idea that I cover in the book, it's not a huge book, it's a small book, but is the application of sportsmanship to business. That we should look at to sports, which has been around forever, and how do we really apply ethics? And that's good sportsmanship. I think that is a very, very useful framework to apply to business, because both business and sports, they really do aim to be a meritocracy, right? So instead, I'm a fan of Martin Luther King and the idea of judging a person based on their character, not on some arbitrary thing like your color or your gender or sexual orientation. I mean, all that seems to me somewhat random and out of my control or anybody's control. But the merit of the person is important, meritocracy, right? And so that's what I like about sports. So if I look at an American basketball team, there's a lot of African Americans on that team. In fact, if we look at population studies, I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but I think it's somewhere around 10% of the American population are made of African Americans. And but if I look at a basketball team, it's way higher than 10% because it doesn't matter about what the person looks like or anything. It's can you put points on the board? And I think that same sort of ethos should be applied to business, right? The points being money in the bank or some other KPI.
So, the concept of a group writing is about controlling the connection point, controlling opponent, the concept. So, you think this equivalent the consolidation point to control the entire. I know there's a glitch, Mr. or Coach Jake. I will repeat my question. The concept of a grip fighting is about controlling the connection point to control the entire opponent. In business, what are the equivalent grips you fight for?
Yeah. So again, to me, it depends where the business is. Like, are you making under $1 million? Are you making under 10 million? Are you making over $10 million? That's going to change a little bit about what the focus is with regards to these grips that you mentioned. But I think the number one thing that you need to get a handle on in business is the first thing you need to do is you need to know your way around your income statement. That's probably the first thing. So, or profit and loss statement, it's the same thing. You need to understand your top line, which is comprised of your marketing and your sales activities. So, that line is actually the most important line because every other line that comes after it is dependent on that top line. My profit cannot be bigger than my revenue. It's just by definition. So if I want my profit to get bigger, the first thing I have to do is get the revenue, the sales and marketing as high as I possibly can. And then obviously secondarily reduce the costs, the expenses, and then I will be maximizing profit. So I think that again, this goes back to data and numbers. I think it's fundamental. So when I have clients, I have on average a 1,400% return on advertising or return on investment. I'm sorry, a 1,400% ROI for my coaching. But a big reason why is I really push people to get control through their numbers and their data so that they can have a dashboard and it takes the emotional stuff out. Let's say I have a bad month or I have a great month. It takes it out and I could just look at it and the data is really the starting point of the story. It allows me to get a handle on, okay, I had a bad month. What happened this month? Was there any reason for it? Oh, or was it something outside of my control? Was it something in my control? If it was something in my control, can I tweak it? Can I change it? If I had a great month, how can I repeat things that went well? But the basis, the first grip, is really getting good data. So that might mean you need systems you might need a CRM. You might need some sort of way to track your accounting, like QuickBooks. That's probably the equivalent. I don't know if that answered your question, but I hope it does.
Indeed, Coach Jake. And as a coach, what are your short-term and long-term goals?
As a coach, yeah. So
Yes,
my
please.
short term goals as a coach is to be the number one 10x performance coach for Grant Cardone. Again, I was the number one coach for Grant Cardone. I don't know if people know who that is. He's a wealthy, a billionaire who made his money through real estate, sales, and marketing. I've been working with him since 2022. And last year I was his number one coach. So I'd like short term to do that again in 20 for the 2025 year. I think I'm on track, but we won't know until those awards are announced. My long term goals, I have a big goal where I see a big shift happening before 2030. And I think a lot of it has to do with AI. And I have a long term goal that I would like to help 100,000 people transition from having a W-2 or, in America, having a salary, transitioning into building out a business that they have ownership in, so that not only do they have more money, but they also understand at a deeper level what it takes to run a successful business. So that could apply in their current job or in the job that they're starting. So those are kind of my long-term and short-term goals. Thank you.
Good luck to your goals. And Coach Jake, looking forward for more success. And what will be your piece of advice for those people out there want to be a coach like you?
Well, if you want to be a coach like me, I think the very first thing you need to do is you need to find a good mentor. You need to find yourself a good coach and get coached so that you understand what it feels like to have a good coach. So then you can apply that to people when you begin to coach. I think that would probably be the most important thing. And then second is just never ever quit. Like I look at it. There's a saying that's pretty popular in athletics. You either win or you learn, and I think it's the same in business as well. So the only way you really lose is if you quit. So just keep on trucking. Don't ever give up.
Yes, don't be give up. Try until you succeed. And Coach Jake, can you please recommend a book or books to influence your journey?
Yeah, I've had a number of books influence my journey. I think the book that influenced my journey the most was one of the ones I read early on. It was The Fountainhead by Ayn Rand, which is an old book. It's a very old book. But at one time, I'm not sure if this is true anymore, but I think it's still in the top five most influential books in America in terms of, I think, number of copies sold or something like that. That book was very foundational because I had never really had much business understanding or a grasp of the philosophy behind business. And Ayn Rand really was a great communicator for people that are young people that are trying to get a grip on the world. And given that we live typically in kind of some sort of capitalism, her books were really great in that regard. And probably a more recent book that I've really enjoyed is from my mentor, Grant Cardone, 10X Rule. I love it. This is a really
Mm-hmm.
fantastic book. Um, he's a brilliant coach. So probably the Fountainhead and the 10X Rule.
The TEDx rule, and thank you for that recommended books. Coach Jake, thank you. A wrestler's strength must be a financial strength, not just for show. How do you ensure your company's resources and capabilities are functional strength that directly translates to competitive advantage, not just a vanity metrics?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with proper allocation of resources. And so that could be, if you're a solopreneur, that could just be how you use your time. You have to be very methodical, and your energy. This is again why I'm very bullish on the next 5 years because of AI. I think it's going to enable more solopreneurs to be able to do things that they never were before. It's very exciting. I'm very deep into AI. In addition to be the 2024 Coach of the Year for Grant Cardone for the 10X performance coaching program. I'm also the chief data and AI officer. And my wife and I own a software company. So I'm very deep into technology, but in particular this AI. I'm very, very, very bullish on that. But if beyond just the AI for solo entrepreneurs, it's also important for businesses that have 10 to 200 employees or even more. But in that case, you also add the ability to really get alignment and lead your team properly. I think those are probably the things that are fundamentally important and crucial, functionally speaking.
Functionally speaking, Coach Jake, on adversity and the mental game, every wrestler gets taken down. The key is mat return and ability to instantly recover and again position. What does strategic mat return look like for business after a significant competitive setback or failed product launch?
Yeah, it can be brutal. I've been through a number of scenarios. One where just the market doesn't even like anything you're selling, and you try every possible way, it's dead, or a competitor steals your intellectual property or steals your customers, or there's all kinds of setbacks like this. And the first thing that you have to do is you have to go back to, like I was speaking earlier, to those big goals and the reason why you're doing it. And if you don't have that why, it's very easy to quit. But for example, I think there's like a reason why athletes sometimes will have, or business people will have pictures of their family or their kids, for example. So you really have to have your why dialed in. So when you get beat up, you don't give up, you get back up. Um, um, the other thing you have to do is you do really, there's other reasons for studying the metrics and the KPIs and the numbers. And one of those is it removes the emotion, or it allows you to, if you can regulate your emotions, you could just look at the numbers and have a better idea as to like what is really going on in your business, and take a lot of the emotion out. Because if you get hammered, let's say COVID happens again and everybody's forced to close their business, that was catastrophic for most people. Well, you have to adapt and improvise and pivot, and you have to do it quickly. And sometimes the people that have been able to adapt and improvise and pivot is because they've gone through and they're prepared. They've done the scenario analysis, they've thought of all the various possible outcomes that could happen. So when things do go bad, they have some sort of contingency plan.
Coach Jake, before we wrap up the podcast, people, my other podcast, because my episode is already in fifth season. I'm so excited. Second season, I'm hoping for season two. If you want one second season, Geography 101, Letters Book 101, Music 101 fourth season, Geography 101, Science 101 second season on my baby podcast, Law 101, Mental Health 101, and Bible Verses 101. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Coach Jake, the best wrestler can adopt their style mid match. What frameworks can you borrow from wrestling to help a business pivot its game plan in the real time when competitive landscape shifts unexpectedly?
Well, I mean, there's a number of things you can do. You do need to have some sort of sensibility and have done some sort of like serious preparation, right? So if
Hmm.
you go in to business or a deal or a match or a fight and you haven't done your homework, and your homework could look like a number of things. One, again, could be market analysis, those kind of things, but it also could look like, in the case of like wrestling, that you're physical body is prepared. So, for example, this is a very big problem I find with a lot of executives is sleep. They simply are not sleeping well enough. That your success today, because there are, like I said, parallels between sport and business. One of them is that if you don't perform, you won't win. If you can't get out and hunt, you can't eat. And so this is one of those things where you need to be tip top shape, absolute top shape. This is why you see so many executives, a lot of them are in great shape because they realize they are under a lot of stress. They can't get sick. If they get sick, what's going to happen? You can't take time off because you're not on the lower rung. You're making all these decisions and you have to be making meetings and things of that nature. So, that's a very, very complex question. But I do think that a lot of it comes down to obviously going to bed on time so you can wake up early so you can maximize your time. One thing that a lot of successful executives do is they wake up at least by 5 a.m. Because, first of all, that would mean that to get 8 hours sleep, you'd have to go to bed at like 9 or 10 to get 7 or 8 hours sleep the night before. But you also get the advantage of waking up early when nobody else is there to bother you. Because especially higher level executives, people are hitting them on their phones or calling them or texting them or DMing them or emailing them all day long or coming into the office. And it's difficult to get any kind of sustained thought with constant interruptions. I mean, a lot of parents have this same phenomena. In the morning, before the kids are awake, before everybody comes into the office, you could get a lot of like really good work done. And if you do in the morning, your brain's going to be sharper in the morning than it is at the end of the day, late at night. So, you know, there's a lot of things, but sometimes the most basic and fundamental things like that are very, very crucial.
Okay, Coach Jake, and thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and expertise today. So can you please invite our listeners to support your business, your advocacy, or whatever projects that you're doing right now?
Yeah, hey, thank you so much, Daniel. Real pleasure. Great show. I love your show. So, if people do want to connect with me and have a little more of a custom conversation about your specific situation, I give 15 minutes of my time to everybody. They can go to numberonecoaching.com. There's a button that can click a call. Anybody that ever wanted that, if I can help you, I'll help you. But you got to go to number one, spelled like this, although it's backwards, NO1coaching.com.
Yes, people, let's support Coach Jake Shannon because if we support him for sure more and more empowering business will rise. So, Coach Jake, thank you so much for your time.
Hey, thank you, Daniel.
Welcome, people. See you soon.